Okay, so today we're looking at our first set of notes for Unit 1, 1.1, the purpose of government. So in these notes, we're going to be looking at what the purpose of government is, the different ways that governments have formed, and also the 6 principles of our government and constitution. What is government? Government is made up of the formal institutions and processes throughout which decisions are made for a group of people. The 3 main components of a government are the people, powers, and policies. So people can be represented by elected officials and public servants. So example, postal carriers, the president, judges, state legislature. Powers, it's the government's authority and ability to get things done. So example are 3 branches of government, the legislative, executive, and judicial branch, and also policy. So policy is any decision made by the government in pursuit of a particular goal. So we're looking at different laws that get passed, taxation, defense, healthcare, transportation, anything that our government creates. 4 characteristics of a state. So first, what is a state? A state is a political unit with the power to make and enforce laws over a group of people living within a clearly defined territory. This can be a county or a nation state. And so in order for something to be a state, it has to have these 4 characteristics: a population, territory, government, and sovereignty. So first, population. A state must have people, but population size does not matter. 2, it must have territory. It must have clearly defined and recognized borders. 3, it has to have a government. So all states politically recognize, government issue, and enforce laws. Lastly, the state needs to have sovereignty. So sovereignty is going to be a word that we use frequently in this class it's a fancy word for power. So in order for a state to be considered a state, it has to have sovereignty, which is supreme power to act within its territory and to control external affairs. Means it's independent from other states and it has the freedom to establish its own government. Functions of government is to ensure national security, guard its territory and its people against external threats, so establishing a military, engaging in diplomacy and negotiations to ensure national security. Government also maintains order, so securing the safety of people and property by creating and enforcing laws. Resolving conflict, providing means to resolve conflicts through politics and the legal system. A government provides services to provide a variety of services ranging from education to public transportation, paid for by tax dollars. And lastly, a government is to provide for the public good. So it makes decisions and policies that attempt to balance the public good with the needs of smaller segments of the population. So ultimately ensuring that all parts of the population are taken care of and have support. Origins of the state. Many theories have been put forth to explain how and why the state came into being. Political philosophers wondered why people would allow others to rule them. They argued that political rulers often have legitimacy. Rulers are seen as right and proper by important segments of a nation's population. So there are 4 main theories of rule, of how rule came to be in certain governments. There is divine right theory, evolution theory, social contract theory, and force theory. We will explore these in more detail in the next slide. So first we have divine right theory, the idea that states are founded by God or the gods and the ruler possesses a divine right to rule, meaning that God has given them their power and that God wants everyone to listen to this ruler. So we see this during the medieval period. We have kings and queens ruling with divine right. So if you were to challenge them, you're essentially going against what God wants. There is the evolution theory that states form gradually over time, growing from family and extended kinship groups. For America, our government is based on the social contract theory that states form when people reach a contract to surrender some power to a common authority in return for security. And lastly, there is the force theory that states form when an individual or group uses force to make enough people submit to a central authority. So this is evident through dictatorships and totalitarian governments when we see a leader or a group take control by force. Our last slide today is on the 6 basic principles of the Constitution. So the 6 basic principles that are evident in our Constitution are popular sovereignty, limited government, separation of powers, checks and balances, judicial review, and federalism. So popular sovereignty, see that word again. So sovereignty meaning power, popular meaning by the people. So the government receives its power from the people. So within our government, the people elect our representatives, our government officials, our president, and so all of that comes from the people. Number 2, limited government. Neither the government itself nor any government official is above the law. So meaning everyone has to abide by the Constitution and follow through with what it states. No one is above following those rules. Number 3, separation of powers. Our government is divided into 3 different branches to ensure that no one branch grows too powerful and ultimately trying to prevent tyranny. Number 4, checks and balances, which kind of goes back to separation of powers. They work kind of together. Each branch of government has the authority to restrain the actions of either of the other 2 branches to ensure that no one branch grows too powerful. Number 5, judicial review. The federal courts have the power to review government actions and to nullify any that are unconstitutional. So even though Congress may pass a law, if the federal courts find that it is unconstitutional, they can strike that law down. So again, providing for that balance that needs to happen. And lastly, we have federalism. So this is the division of power between the federal government and the states. And so there are certain powers that are given to our federal government or national government, and certain powers that are designated to the states to allow them freedom, their own sense of freedom. And so those powers cannot be taken away. So we're done with our notes today. We reviewed kind of the purpose of government, the different styles of why governments have formed, and lastly, we looked at the 6 basic principles of the Constitution. Make sure to go back and fill in your key terms.